For the past 30 days, I researched every single Invincible episode and found 18 insane secrets I guarantee 99% of you missed. For example, during this interaction when Mark and Levy in Season 2, Episode 8, Mark got sent to a lot of crazy dimensions like this one with knockoff Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus, or the one with dinosaurs. However, we didn't get to see the craziest place he got sent to. You see, when Mark jumped out of this portal, he hit Levy with a Dragon's Breath sniper skin straight out of Fortnite. And this wasn't just a random reference because Fortnite did have a collab with Invincible in the past. So this was the show's way of returning the favor. But let's now talk about one of the most mind-blowing reveals that happened in Season 1, Episode 7. Here, we learned that the Immortal isn't just a cool sounding name, and that he really can't die. We also saw that he was actually several major historical figures throughout time, including Abraham Lincoln and even one of King Arthur's knights. Later in the show, when Immortal goes to his old home, we can see many items from his past that he keeps as souvenirs, like a soldier uniform, golden artifacts, a ship in a bottle, and much more. Man, this guy is full of surprises. In Season 1, Episode 3, at around 34 minutes and 20 seconds, we briefly see a prison guard walk by a few cells. And if I pause at this exact moment, you can see that one of them is filled with identical people. So who are these guys? Well, it's actually only one guy, Multi-Paul, a twin brother of Duplicate. Yeah, he is actually a much bigger character in the comic, but I'm guessing he was cut out of the show since he isn't all that important. We never even learned why he ended up in prison in the first place. But did you know that the show wasn't even supposed to be called Invincible? Yeah, the original idea was for the comic and the protagonist to be called Bulletproof, but this idea got thrown out of the window very early in development. It's nice to see that this name wasn't forgotten because at the start of the second season, Bulletproof made his debut as a real character. And the best part is that the costume he uses is the same one Art tried to give Mark at the start of the show. Another really cool secret appeared in the show's very first episode when Mark was reading a comic called Seance Dog. Now, most viewers probably thought this was just some made-up comic book, but true fans know that in the original Invincible comics, the book was actually called Science Dog. So why was this changed? Well, you see, after Science Dog first appeared in the comic, it became really popular. So in order to avoid selling its rights to Amazon along with Invincible, Robert Kirkman, the creator of Invincible, made a decision to change the name. And if you thought some of these secrets were cool, you've seen nothing yet, because this is only the first stage of secrets I'll cover in this video. And with each new stage, the secrets will only keep getting better and better. Like, for example, these insane Invincible foreshadowings. There is so much cool foreshadowing in the show, like when Omni-Man said, "The Earth isn't yours to conquer," to the Flaxans, because as we learned later, it was actually his job to conquer it. However, an even better foreshadowing can be found in the second ever chapter of the comic. Here, while Mark and Eve are talking, he talks about how you can never know when one of your teammates is going to become the next big villain. And while many speculated this to be about Omni-Man, it's actually referring to Robot, who slowly switches sides and becomes a huge problem 100 chapters later. But an even better foreshadowing can be found in the teaser for the third season. Here, the first thing that might catch your attention if you read the comics is that Powerplex, who is going to be a big villain this season, is sitting at a table behind Cecil the whole time. Then Cecil tells Mark about Mr. 10 Times Worse, which is him hyping up the main antagonist of the season, Conquest. But my favorite part was when Cecil said this.
"And don't even get me started on your little 4-month vacation right in the middle of things. We all sure love that."
This comment is the writers poking fun at themselves for having to break off the second season into 2 parts with a 4-month-long break in between. At least they promised not to do that this season. Speaking of attention to detail, did you know that Omni-Man's iconic mustache actually has a reason why it looks that way? It was actually inspired by J.K. Simmons from the original Spider-Man trilogy. But do you want to know the best part? The Amazon team actually hired the same guy to voice Omni-Man in the show. So some of you may know that Robert Kirkman, the guy who created Invincible, also created the Walking Dead series. So you bet he left some cool Easter eggs about it. One of my favorites is this one from Season 2, Episode 6. Near the end of this episode, when Armstrong Levy is jumping through different dimensions, we can see that one of them is filled with zombies that look exactly like they're from The Walking Dead. Also, when Mark fights him in Episode 8, he gets sent to this exact same dimension. And although that reference was pretty cool, did you know that 2 characters from The Walking Walking Dead actually make an appearance in the show? In one of the chapters, a citizen calls two policemen to investigate a UFO crash, and those two just happen to look very similar to the original two Walking Dead protagonists, Rick and Shane. In Chapter 7, when Omni-Man signals all Guardians to come to the base, we can briefly see the Green Ghost transform into his human form, and the symbol on his shirt is interesting. It's a 𝗕𝗲𝗰𝗏𝗏 symbol. Although we have no idea how he even knows about this symbol or why he wears it, the leading theory is that Nolan wore a suit with a 𝗕𝗲𝗏𝗏 logo in his early heroing days, before switching to his current one. During that time, someone must have made merchandise using the logo, and since Green Ghost is a big fan of Omni-Man, he bought it. The other, more boring theory is that this is simply an error. So, you all know how Mark's school is called Reginald VelJohnson High School, but did you know that there is a secret meaning behind it? You see, the name is actually a reference to the actor Reginald VelJohnson, who is most famous for playing Carl Winslow in Family Matters. But what makes this reference even better is that Reginald VelJohnson himself voices the school's principal in the show. Okay, but do you remember when in episode 4, Nolan took Debbie on a date in Rome, and suddenly a dragon appeared and started wrecking the city? The weird thing is that Nolan didn't care at all that a real dragon was flying behind him, almost like he had already seen it before. Well, that's because he did. You see, in the very first episode, at around 14 minutes and 30 seconds, Nolan briefly mentioned that he stopped a dragon in Hong Kong.
Honest to God, a dragon was attacking Hong Kong. I stopped it.
These two moments were a little nod to Mr. Liu, a man with a dragon trapped inside him, who sadly didn't make it into the show on a larger scale, but at least we got to see him once again in episode 8. With that one done, I'll finally start covering the last stage. And these are without a doubt some of the craziest secrets in the entire show. For example, do you remember how Nolan went on a killing spree after being exposed for what he did to the Guardians? Remember how he was completely unstoppable with no one being even close to his level of strength and speed? Yeah, well, what if I told you there was a hero on Earth who could actually defeat Nolan in one punch if he wanted to? In episode 3, one of the background characters who is at the new Guardians of the Globe trials is this bald dude here. And if you just invert the colors of his cape and suit, he looks exactly like Saitama from One Punch Man. He even has the same uninterested face. Omni-Man should be glad this guy didn't come to stop him. But here is one tiny detail that you probably missed if you watched the first season as it aired. So in the very first episode, when all the Guardians are shown doing their own stuff before getting an emergency signal, the Immortal is seen defending the city of Denver from Biplane, a totally forgettable villain who gets launched into space, never to be seen again. Or so we thought. You see, if you paid really close attention in episode 4, when Mark goes to Mars, you can actually see Biplane's corpse in space. Now, that's some great attention to detail. As you probably noticed, Invincible really likes to poke fun at other superheroes, and sometimes even adds joke versions of popular heroes in the show. But one thing the creators love to do even more is add random characters from other comics, hoping nobody would notice. For example, there are some obvious ones like Savage Dragon, who makes an appearance at the Guardian's funeral very early into the story. Multiple characters from Youngblood appeared during the 𝗕𝗲𝗏𝗏 war arc, and even Spawn kind of appears in chapter 69, or at least the same skull he usually wears. But in this same chapter, the creators of the show decided to reference something from the real world as well. Just a few pages after the Spawn Easter egg, amidst panicked citizens, you can see that one of them is wearing a pretty cool shirt. This logo may seem familiar to some of you, and that's because it's the album cover of Wu-Tang Clan's 8 Diagrams album. Another time something from real life snuck its way into the show can be seen when Amber visits Mark for the first time in episode 3. She looks around his room and asks him what his favorite comic is, to which he replies by showing her a comic and describing it as underwater welder who starts seeing ghosts at the bottom of the ocean. At first, I thought that Mark just made this up, but this comic actually exists. It's called Underwater Welder, and you can see here that it looks identical to the one in the show. Click on this video next, where we explained all Mark's forms in Invincible. Go on, click it.